Hello and welcome back to the Exceleration Netcast. In this week's episode, we've got some tabular data that looks like this. Each row is connected to both a year and an account, and for each one of those, we've got either some budget information, some revenue information, or some expense information. And what we want to do is we want to take data that looks like this and we want to summarize it in a pivot table that looks like this, where you've got all the budget stuff broken down by individual accounts and then like a total up here at the top, and all the revenue stuff broken down by accounts and then subtotal up here at the top, and then also broken down on the columns by year. Now the tricky thing is if you try and do this normally, you're going to run into with a normal pivot table, you're going to run into a problem in that if you try and throw both years and budget, revenue, expense up there on the top, it's going to be a really ugly looking pivot table. So to make this work, what we're going to have to do is we're going to basically create two additional columns over here. We're going to have one column which is going to be the number, whatever number is here in one of these three columns, and then the next column is going to be the type, whether it's a budget, a revenue, or an expense. Then we're going to use the type to sort of group on for the pivot table, and then we're going to use the number for our actual aggregation. And we'll be able to get a pivot table report that looks a lot like this. And to do that, we could do it in regular old Excel, but I think it's going to work a lot better in Power Query, and Power Query is a lot of fun, so we're going to do it in Power Query. So to start off with, I'm going to head over up to the ribbon, go to Power Query. I've removed the drop-down tables. I guess I can bring them back so you can see what they look like. So I've removed the filter buttons, but this is in fact a table. So I'm going to go to Power Query and do Get Data From Table. Okay, this is a pretty easy set of transformations we're going to do. We're going to left click on Budget, shift click on Expense to select those three columns, head up to Transform, and go to Unpivot Columns. What we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of new rows, and there's a new column that's going to say whether or not each row is a budget, or revenue, or an expense item, and it's going to have these relative numbers associated with it. So we should have 30 or 3 times as many rows as we've got now. So right now we've got 24 rows. We hit Unpivot Columns, and we've got 50 rows. So pretty close. Oh, 72. Good. Okay, my math actually worked out. Great. I like it when that happens. That's pretty good. The thing that I don't like now is we've got the budget, whether or not the line item is a budget, or revenue, or an expense. We've got the values, but I don't like these names. I don't like attribute and value. Now we could right-click on each one of these and do rename and handle it that way. Then we add a bunch of applied steps. I think what's going to be even cooler is to change the actual code itself. So to do that, first make sure that up here in View you've got Formula Bar checked. If you uncheck it, the Formula Bar goes away, but we want to actually modify the code manually. Okay, so now that we've got that, here's the line of code. We're using Unpivot other columns. That's the function that we're calling. All this other stuff you can ignore. These last two text strings refer to what the names of these finished columns are. So attribute refers to attribute, value refers to value. So we're going to just go ahead and change that. I'm going to change attribute to category, and we're going to change value to amount. And we're going to hit enter. Okay, that was pretty easy. And the last thing we're going to do is we're basically going to assume that every place up here, let's click on this. Every place in the source table where there is a 0, we're going to treat that as if there's no transaction. We're going to say for this line, it's not that the revenue is 0, it's that there's just 0. There's no revenue at all. There's no revenue and there's no expense. So to do that, we're going to come up here and we're going to filter out all the rows that have 0 as a value. So we're just going to click on that drop down, uncheck 0, and hit OK. All right, great. So this is the data we need. We're going to take this data and bring it back into Excel by going to Home and Close and Load. It's going to create a new worksheet, and on that new worksheet, they're going to have a table which is receiving the contents of that query, the output of that query. Here's the query, and here's where the output of it goes. And we could clean this up a little bit, but it really doesn't matter because what we're going to do immediately is take this data and throw it into a pivot table. So I'm going to go to Insert, Pivot Table. I'm going to do this on a new worksheet. I'm going to click OK. All right, so we're going to start off by putting financial year on columns because we definitely wanted that. We're going to take amount and put that in values. We're going to take ACT or account and put that in rows. And so now we end up here with this thing, which looks kind of close to what we want, but the big kicker, the thing that we really want to be able to do is take category and drag that on top of account to break it down by type, so whether it's budget, expense, or revenue. All right, there's several things I could do to clean this up. The first one, I'm going to do Alt WVG to remove the grid lines. And I'm going to click on this here, and I'm going to head up to Analyze. I'm going to change the number formatting. I'm not going to do a lot of cleaning on this, but for some reason that number formatting thing, I always have to fix that. So, I just did that way too fast, by the way. Cancel. So click somewhere on here. I'm going to click on the grand total, somewhere on the sum of account calculation. Go up here to Pivot Tables Analyze, go to Field Settings, go to Number Format. You can do your own homebrew, make it look really nice. I'm just going to go to Accounting, drop the decimal places down to 0, hit OK, click OK. Now anywhere that calculation occurred, now we've got this accounting number format, which looks a whole lot better. All right, like I said, there's a whole lot of other things that I could do to clean that up, but I think you get the general idea. What we did is, keeping in mind, we used Power Query to unpivot these columns, turn it into 2 additional columns, one which says whether or not it's a budget, revenue, or expense, which we're going to use to group by in the pivot table, and then an additional column to take all of these numbers and just create one number out of it. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next video.